Good morning. So I'm going to continue the theme. There were six major life events that I can remember the details of where I was, when I heard about them. My marriage and the birth of my sons, that accounts for three of them. September 11th is the fourth, and then Challenger and Columbia are the other two. Now, I wasn't even a part of NASA when Challenger happened or Columbia happened. In fact, in Challenger, I was in high school, a junior, walking down the hall, and Christian Myers came up and told me about the accident. And so you got to wonder, what is it about these types of events that cause such lasting memories in us? And I think I believe it's the mission. It's this mission that at times can seem impossible. This exploration of the unknown that fascinates so many of us, and no matter your age, no matter your profession, no matter your background. And so when astronauts launch into space, they take our dreams and our hopes with them. And so then when these tragedies happen, it can have a very profound effect on us in many ways. I am honored to be here at Marshall on this day of remembrance, to speak on behalf of those who have given their lives in the pursuit of space exploration. You know, as astronauts, we are aware of the risks, and in large part because of the loss of 17 of our colleagues over the years. But I think it's also important to remember that their sacrifices have benefited all of us that have followed after them. Mistakes were certainly made. And NASA has learned from those mistakes, and spaceflight, human spaceflight, is safer today because of that. As we work with commercial companies now to open up low Earth orbit to more and more people, it is safer. As we go on to the moon, as we pursue going to Mars, that is safer today because of the sacrifice of those you see up here before you. And so that safety culture, it is everywhere in NASA. It dictates everything we do. It's one of our core values. And that safety culture, it doesn't just apply to astronauts when they're on a mission. It applies when we're in training, and it applies to non-astronauts, everybody that works at NASA. It applies to them, it applies to the family or our communities. And so because of that, I think it's important, and the Center Director mentioned this, Jody mentioned this, that, you know, we need to remember the others as well that have lost their lives pursuing this dream with NASA. Astronauts like Ted Freeman, Elliot C., Charlie Bassett, who lost their lives in T-38 training accidents. Sonny Carter, who lost his life on a commuter flight for NASA. And then there's James Vanover. Many of you have probably never heard of James. He was a swing-arm engineer that lost his life on Pad 39A. And so there are many people that we should be remembering today, and I'd like to recognize one last group that I think oftentimes is forgotten, and that's the families. I didn't realize how hard spaceflight is on the families until after my first mission, several months after my first mission. I launched to the space station on a Soyuz back in 2013, spent 160 plus days in space, came home, textbook landing, and everything was good. And then 2 months later, I was in mission control as the next Soyuz was coming back. And I was with Rick Mastracchio's wife and daughter. And those of you who don't know, when we launch and we land, we always have an astronaut that's with the immediate family. And part of the reason for that is we're able to explain what's going on. But the other reason is if something bad happens. And so we get the families to a safe location, and we become a conduit of information, and we also become a source of comfort for them. And so, sorry, it gets me emotional as I even think about it. And so I'm sitting there with Rick's wife and daughter, and as you're coming in, there's a point in entry where we go into blackout, calm blackout. And so we're listening to the communication that's going on. We've got the speakers on, and so we're hearing Capcom Glavny calling up to the capsule, and then you get into that blackout period. And that's when it hit me. That's when I realized, my gosh, this is hard, because you don't know. I couldn't look at Rick's wife and say everything's okay, because you don't know. And then what makes it even harder is right before they're supposed to come out of that blackout period, they start making calls in the blind from the ground. And so you'll hear that call to the capsule, and then nothing. And you'll hear that call to the capsule, and then nothing. And it made me realize what my family had gone through for me to go to space. So we mentioned that next week, 20 years. And so as we honor them and remember them, I'd like you to also to remember their families that have to continue to relive that moment when they didn't get to hear that call back from their family.